Hi everyone. So this is this month's Spectator podcast for October. We're so happy to be back this year in person. It's been forever. And for this month's Spectator, our special focus will be mental health. And that's why we have joining us Miss Dalia. Thank you for being here. Thank you for agreeing to do this. It's lovely to see you here.
Thank you so much for having me and asking me.
Of course, we're very excited.
Yep. So Miss Dalia, she is our school's newest therapist and counselor.
Mm-hmm.
And we have some questions for you. So just to start off, quick introduction. How have the first couple months been treating you? Have you been adjusting? How do you feel like, LFA suits you and fits you? All that.
It's since I graduated from LFA just a few years ago, maybe a few more than a few, but it's nice to be back and see all the changes and ways that LFA has progressed. So it's nice to walk the halls again, even though the halls look different. Some of the halls look different, and there's a lot of new buildings from when I was here. In regards to the first couple of months, I have absolutely loved getting to know not only the health services team that I work very closely with, but all the other faculty and, of course, all the students that I've gotten to interact with and develop a relationship with, because they are what makes LFA. The students, the one thing I like is that the students haven't changed in regards, no matter how many decades have gone by, because there's still that passion and that desire to make their experience at LFA the best one they can overall. So the first couple of months have really been me getting into the swing of things and relearning the A through G schedule and kind of learning how to teach, because I don't have a teaching background. So co-teaching with Ms. Carter has been a lot of fun. And we're enjoying teaching health, wellness, and community to the juniors. And hopefully they're enjoying it too. So yeah, that's it's been a lot. I guess you also asked how I'm adjusting to being in the school and working with. It's a lot of, some days are quiet, and I love the fact, and some days are really not. I love the fact that I never know what I'm going to get when I walk in, because I may have a plan and I have set appointments scheduled with students and classes, and it can completely turn upside down. and I thrive in that setting.
That's awesome.
That's great to hear.
Good to hear. You touched a little on your experience, not having as much teaching experience, but we wanted to ask about your experience, your education in mental health. What experiences do you have with schools and working with just other humans, and what jobs you had in the past?
So I went to both undergrad and graduate school in Chicago.
Nice.
I graduated from graduate school in 2005. And I've been in private practice for almost 13 years.
Wow.
12 and a half years. And in my private practice, I've always focused on adolescence through adulthood. And my niche area has always been working with women of various ages. And that's been more recent than I used to see people that I identified as male or female. But as I started I just started drawing in more clientele that identified as female.
That's awesome.
Okay, so that's a great segue into our next question, just given your expertise in the field. What do you think, I'm just going to combine these next two questions.
Okay.
What are the causes? There seems to be like a surge in mental health issues recently. What do you think the causes of it is, and how much of it do you think is related to the pandemic, and especially for students, because we're talking.
Yes, so we're talking about students and two students, and I think that overall, as your generation is getting older, and I love the fact that mental health is becoming concerns of mental health, and it's being normalized. Seeing a therapist is being normalized, and that I think is extremely important, because I think there's always been, with even a little bit with my generation and older, there's always been a stigma attached to it, and there shouldn't be, because just like you would go to a physician if you were sick, like had a cold or the flu, like it's the same type of thing. It's taking care of yourself and taking care of your body. And your mind is still part of your body, and you should use the same care for that as you do any other part of you. I think we have seen an increased... There's been a surge just because of, one, normalizing it, and two, with the pandemic, I think it has definitely created an added stressor that we didn't anticipate, because humans are social beings, and when we had to quarantine and we were isolated, it caused a lot of internal struggle for many people, because that's not how we naturally are. Even people that are introverts need a certain level of socialization or seeing other people, and so it, I think, increased that stress level and that into becoming a little more unhealthy, to the point of like causing a little more anxiety, because we didn't know what we were going to get. We didn't know when we were going to go back to what quote unquote normal, whatever that is.
Right.
And now we are kind of coming back and want to be back as students and in the school, like full-fledged as it was 2 years ago. But there's still a difference, because we still have masks on. Like I'm so used to seeing kids with masks on that when they take them off, I don't even recognize them until they put it back on. Like I'm like, wait, I think I know you. Put your mask on, and I'll tell you what your name is. And so it's figuring out that balance of us wanting to be social, but also having the stressors of academics and that increased awareness of our internal emotions and feelings, I think, is also what's coming out, which is we're throwing people into a setting that we're not, without creating that ladder to get to that setting. We're just asking them to jump.
And I think I can personally speak on like the sentiment of, normalizing mental health and like therapy, because I used to not really think that it was like a normal thing until like I was approached with opportunities. And I feel like what you've said about it really, like, it's really relevant to like that thing being more and more normalized, and I think it should be like that's how it should be, like sort of talking about mental health, like having these conversations being more normalized. You want to ask the next question?
Totally. You touched on the pandemic and kind of academics going hand in hand when it comes to anxiety levels, and with sports and the SATs and college essays and all these different aspects kind of coalescing into this bundle of kind of chaos at some points. Kids are dealing with a lot of anxiety. Do you have any advice on ways to deal with anxiety?
So I think, one, I should say that I've been talking to a lot of not only parents, but counselors from other schools in the area. And I think that what students at LFA are experiencing is also being seen in the other local high schools. And it's just a little more, it might feel a little more intense, and it may be a little more intense because we're a boarding school. And so we're not always watching, the schools are not always watching what the kids are doing outside. Where here, the boarders live here. So there's a big difference. And in regards to what you can do about that anxiety, I think it's so individualized. And anxiety presents in so many different ways that it is really difficult to give kind of a blanket statement or a blanket tool that works for every single person. And so it's something that, we practice. It's a muscle we practice, we build. In a way, it's something that we have to, and sometimes we have to try different techniques to help manage our anxiety.
So this next question is sort of, again, related to that. So we know currently that a lot of things are coming in together and like weighing down on students. Like, for example, when students come back from their sports practices at like 10 at night, or like come back from the musicals, and many seniors obviously doing college visits, college work. So what do you think personally should teachers be able to do on their end in terms of assigning work that accommodates for student mental health, but also making sure that's like really fair for everyone?
That's a really tricky question because I don't have that education teacher background.
Right.
My approach is very different because I don't have a set, for health, wellness, and community, we get curriculum that needs to be taught and reviewed, but it is not as strict on the order, and we have a little bit of leeway. And I think it depends on the class on how much flexibility there is. But I think all of us faculty being on the same page of figuring out how to work together as well as with the students that may have a college visit, may have come back from a game late, may have had play till really late and not have been able to get to that assignment that was assigned that day, is something we need to kind of all discuss and figure out. It's something that I know the school at least used to be really big on students advocating for themselves, and I know it still is, and approaching the teachers and talking to them about how can I do this, like how can we work through this struggle that I have, and the teachers being receptive to that, because I know as a student it can be scary to go up to a teacher that doesn't always give you extra time or like will push back an assignment due date, but still having those conversations.
I think it's hard, especially when schedules are so individualized too. Like each student has such a variety of different types of classes, and it
different leadership opportunities as well, and like
so outside many, of school things.
Out of school,
complex.
There's we schedule ourselves, and the students do the same. We and especially this year, I think we've all kind of overscheduled ourselves because we're so excited to be back. And I think we have to sometimes take a step back and say, what do I really need and what fulfills me and allows me to achieve whatever goal that may be. If something is fulfilling, like if you're doing something as an extracurricular and that is actually one of your happy things and is a happy place, then you continue doing that and you figure out how to work around that.
Yeah.
If it's an added stressor, then we need to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Definitely. And kind of pivoting to look at the larger community, not just students. Obviously, mental health is something that impacts everyone, especially, looking at faculty and staff. What are some kind of commonalities that you see between students and faculty when it comes to mental health? And how can we kind of work, despite age differences or power dynamics, to kind of work together to better the school in a whole?
So I think my daughter, I have a 10-year-old daughter, and she looked at, she saw that the younger Mr. Madeley dyed his hair. And yes, I'm making it. She was like, teachers are allowed to do that? And I said, well, yes, because teachers are people. And it just she had to sit back and think about that for a minute. And I think that was a good lesson to all of us. Like, faculty and staff, we're adults. We choose to be here.
Right.
But we're all people. Students are too. So we all have our own struggles that the other person may not know about. And just using that empathy and grace when interacting with each other, I think, is so incredibly valuable. And knowing that just like the students may have gotten really excited and overbooked themselves, I think a lot of the faculty and staff have too. I think we all are really eager to be here and we want to be here. And I think everyone is kind of stretched a little thin right now. And we're now starting to feel it a little bit more. And that doesn't mean that it's a negative overall. It's how do we work together to support each other. It's also not the students' jobs to worry about the adult stress. It's because in the end, I know seniors do not want to be called children. I don't think juniors want to be called children, but in the end, you guys are still children, and this is high school where you are supposed to figure out how to manage these things and have that safety net still.
Yeah.
Before you go away to college, where that safety net isn't as secure. And us as the faculty and staff are supposed to help provide that safety net. And we need to take care of ourselves and each other as well as the students.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and that kind of goes on to our next question about like how students manage themselves, but more specifically, like a lot of boarders at LFA, a common issue that they're kind of facing is like cabin fever, being stuck in their rooms. Not just now the weekend activity's been like opening up more with 14 people being allowed on a van, but even then, like a lot of the times boarders have they're either home, like they're either in their rooms, in their dorms, like alone or with someone else, but they have not a lot to do, and that can understandably be kind of damaging to their mental health. So what do you think are some de-stressors that can help them sort of like be more at ease when they're suffering from like cabin fever or something like that?
So I think while the weather is still nice, and this weekend is supposed to be gorgeous, but I know this is going to be released after the weekend. But while the weather is nice, and even when it's getting cooler, walking and running or just going for a walk with your friends is an amazingly healing thing. It's a de-stressor that we overlook because we tend to walk to classes and we're always on the move. But when you're walking without a destination and you're just able to talk, it's a great way of connecting with someone, and it's a great way of kind of getting that fresh air that we all need, because that is also really important. Sunlight, fresh air, those are really important things. This week the weather hasn't been great. It's been rainy, and that you can tell there's kind of this like overall like cloud over everyone. Everyone's energy level is just a little lower than what it normally is.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that doesn't cost anything. That is definitely something I would recommend. If you have bikes, go for a bike ride. Taking advantage of the property at the LFA campus, which is a very beautiful campus that is not common. And seeing the advantages that we have here by doing that. Ordering in food if you can, or taking the food from Stu and eating outside on the benches. I rarely see people outside on those benches outside of Stu, which to me is crazy because I'd eat out there every meal. Like I try to, even when the seats are wet. And just because it's nice to be able to do those little things. I know that hopefully we are able to get slightly more relaxed. Or more, not more relaxed. We're able to get more weekend activities going, and I know they're trying to make sure we can accommodate some of those more popular weekend trips.
Yeah.
And in terms of, it's kind of perfect segue into our next question, looking kind of into the future for LFA, both immediate and a greater future. What are some of the goals that the school has in terms of mental health, and what are some of the things that they want to accomplish to help better it?
I nothing is set in stone right now. I know it is something that is actively being discussed, and it is top of mind for a lot of people. We are trying to figure out what can we not only do as a short term, like more immediately, as well as long term, that's sustainable, because it is, and this is something that it has, I think, always been a movement in the right direction. We've taken, when I was here, there was one counselor that no one would go see unless they were referred to them. And if they were referred to them, that was like, oh my gosh. Like, it was not really something that was commonly utilized. So it's something that we need to understand, that we are constantly making progress. It sometimes feels slower because we're not always able to see what's happening in the background.
That's a great point.
Yeah. So I heard an analogy that there was this woman who is a head of a school and in Texas, and she said that when her first administrative job was to, I love stories, by the way. Her first administrative job was, she was all excited, and she was the assistant to the assistant of the summer the dean of summer programming. And what she discovered her job is to make sure all the locker combinations worked.
Sounds awful.
It sounds awful, right?
Oh my God.
And what happened was, she's like, but it's a great analogy because when things are going well, no one notices that there's someone that's their full job, right?
Uh-huh.
It's when it goes wrong that people start getting angry and start looking at her on, why aren't you doing this?
Yeah.
Right.
And so there's always stuff going on in the background, and we have to be cognizant of there's always stuff going on in the background, even if we don't see the results right away.
Definitely. So I know we're running a little low on time. Do you have any last thoughts or advice for the LFA community during these times that could be very difficult for many students and faculty alike?
All I can say to everyone part of LFA community is that both Mrs. Madeley and I are here. We're not scary, I promise. And we would love to talk to any and all of you. We will make the time for faculty as well as students. Faculty, staff, and students. It is something that we're both very passionate about, and I'm speaking for her, which I shouldn't. I am very passionate about and connecting, because I think that we grow in connection and building those relationships.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing your expertise and all that.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.
Yeah.
All right, catch us next month with another issue of the Spectator podcast.
All right, this is Spectator Podcast.